Okay, Maseches Rosh Hashanah. It sounded we would have liked to do Rosh Hashanah before, that it should have been in time in Rosh Hashanah in Kippur Sukkot. But it is interesting that Rosh Hashanah is not only the first of Tishrei, as we used to it, as Mishnah is going to start the Rosh Hashanah, and very big part of the Masechta is not Dafka what we call Rosh Hashanah, but it's going to be about the different Rosh Hashanah. The word Rosh Hashanah means the beginning of the year. It doesn't mean Yom Adin. It doesn't mean Day of Judgment. It means the beginning of the year. And the Mishnah right away is going to tell us that the year is counted in different cycles, different ways of counting the year. And there are 4 cycles of the year that have 4 different beginnings. And also a big part of the Masechta is going to be about Rosh Chodesh in general. It doesn't have to do Dafka with Rosh Hashanah. So the Masechta in general is not Dafka. We don't have to wait Dafka a whole year to come back that it should be relevant. A lot of it is not Dafka for the first of Tishrei. So the Masechta starts, Abba Rashi Shanim Heim. There are 4 beginnings of the years. Beginnings of the years. That means the year could be counted in different beginnings, cycle of a year. And the first one is Echad B'Nisan. The first of Nisan is considered the first Rosh Hashanah, the first beginning of the year. And what is it for? Echad B'Nisan Rosh Hashanah Lamlochim B'Lo Regalim, for kings and the holidays. So what does it mean for kings? In the way that you count the years of which year of the reign of a certain king it is. So on the first of Nisan, he progresses a year. Means you don't go according to the personal anniversary of how many years he's ruling, but when it comes the first of Nisan, now it starts that year is over, and now it starts another year. And the Gemara is going to talk about what is irrelevant to know when the king became in office and how many years he's in reign. What is the difference to us? And also the Regalim. The Regalim means the Chagim. We know the Chagim are Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, and it seems to say that the order of the Chagim is going to be that Nisan goes first. The way the Mishnah says the first of Nisan is Rosh Hashanah, there is no Chag in the first of Nisan, but it probably means the Gemara is going to talk about the Nisan, and it means that Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, the order of the Chagim is going to be Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, and also has to have explanation. What is the difference? Who says that's to be a certain order? And there are 3 Chagim. What's the difference? What the order is? But we'll have to see in the Gemara both of these things. What does it mean that the first of Nisan is the beginning of the year as far as kings go and as far as the holidays? The second Rosh Hashanah is the first of Elul. And what is that Rosh Hashanah for? When is the beginning of the year as far as Ma'aseh Behemah? As we said yesterday, Ma'aseh Behemah means that when you have new animals that are born in your flock of cows, sheep, and goat. So from the new flock, from the new ones that are born, the children, the Vlados. So if you take off Ma'aseh Behemah, you bring all of the new Vlados into a corral, and you have a small opening that one could leave at a time. You take them out one at a time, and the 10th one is marked as a korban, Ma'aseh Behemah, and that's brought as a korban. It doesn't go to the Kohen, and Ma'aseh Lechol Adam. You bring it as a korban, and the Israelim themselves are allowed to eat it, but it's a korban. So what does it mean that it's Rosh Hashanah? It means that Rashi brings down, the pasuk says, "Hayotzei Sadeh Shana Shana." As far as the meiser of grain, the halacha is that you can't tithe the grains of different years together. You have to take the grains of each year and take off tithings from that alone. So too by animals, if you have 5 animals from before Rosh Hashanah and 5 animals after Rosh Hashanah, they don't go together. You can't take, you don't, or 50 and 50, whatever. You don't put them into the same corral when you want to be maaser, when you want to tithe the animals. You just take the animals that are from each year alone, and you have to tithe them. You can't mix 2 different years. So you have to know what is the cutoff point. The cutoff point in Machlokes is it the first of Elul or the first of Tishrei? The Mishnah continues that everyone considers Echad B'Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah. We just spoke about Echad as far as Ma'aseh Behemah. That was a Machlokes. The Agav comes out that according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, they're not 4 Rosh Hashanah. It's only going to be 3 because it doesn't have Echad B'Elul. But the Chachamim have Echad B'Elul, so you have the first of Nisan, the first of Elul, and now the first of Tishrei. Everybody holds as a Rosh Hashanah. What is that for? So that's not going to say L'chorah. We'll see what the Mishnah says, but we're not. Just to point out that in this whole discussion, we're not talking about Yom Adin. We're not talking about the Day of Judgment. That's not the point. We have a very big association. You think Rosh Hashanah, you think of the Day of Judgment. That's not what the words mean. There's Rosh Hashanah, there's Yom Adin, the beginning of the year. So we're just talking about the cutoff point that was considered a new year. Still, Bechad B'Tishrei, everybody says is considered a new year as far as what? Rosh Hashanah l'shanim, the Shmitim, the Yovlos, the Netiyah, the Yerakos. 5 things. The Shana means for years, which is not clear. What does that mean? That's going to be a Gemara's discussion. What does it mean It's the beginning of the year. As far as what goes, as far as what? What's the ramifications of being the beginning of the year? So we'll see the Gemara. Rashi himself doesn't tell us. He says, wait for the Gemara. Shemitah and Yovel, that's easy. This year we had Shemitah started. When did it start? On the first of Tishrei. That the year of Shemitah, that you're not allowed to do work in the field, and whatever other halachas come with Shemitah. So that goes from the first of Tishrei until the first of Tishrei. Also Yovel on the 50th year. Nowadays there's no Yovel, but when there is Yovel also on the 50th year, so it starts from Echad B'Tishrei until Echad B'Tishrei. Lanatia means a sapling when you plant a new tree. It doesn't mean an old tree, it means a young tree when you just planted a tree. And that Rashi says has to do with Orla. That Orla, we know that the first 3 years is Orla. So also it doesn't go from the birthday. You don't say from the anniversary of when you planted it, you have to count full 3 years. That's going to be Orla. There's also a cutoff point. The same way we said by kings, that you don't count the anniversary of how many years he's in office from the day that it became inaugurated. You don't do that. You go, once it becomes Nisan, it's the first year is over and you start the next year. So too by Natia, when it comes the first day of Tishrei, it's considered that the first year is over. If it was planted before, so the first year is over. Now you're ready into the second year.
Maybe it was the day before.
So no, so Rashi says, Rashi tells it has to be in the middle of Av. We're going to see that you have to have, I think, 45 days in order that it should be considered a year. So that part the Mishnah doesn't say. We'll see more details about that later. But the point is that you don't need a full year. That once it comes Echad B'Tishrei, as long as you had a certain amount of time before that, we'll see. So then it's considered a year, and then the Orla will be over on the first of Tishrei after 3 years is over, and after that third year, and then the fourth year is also going to be from maybe we'll see for soon about the fourth year. Does Rashi say anything about the Rashi that says Orla? Let's see Rashi a second. L'natia l'mini shnei Orla. That's all he says. I feel not above, and it finished at the end of Elul. Okay. Rashi that says Orla will keep the Rashi. It does says Orla. And Yerokos. Yerokos means vegetables, and for what do we have to know the beginning of a year for vegetables? So Rashi says Trumas and Maisros. Trumas and Maisros means similar to what we said before by Meiser Beima, it's also by Meiser of food. So you have to know each year separately because you can't take off Meiser from produce that grew in 1 year from produce that grew in a different year. So you have to tithe each year on its own. Also, there's another ramification, not just to know from year to year, but also that in some years there's Meiser Sheni, some years there's Meiser Ani. How does it go? The first, second is Meiser Sheni, and the third is Meiser Ani. The fourth, fifth is Meiser Sheni, and the sixth is Meiser Ani. So to know which year belongs to, you have to know, and that which Meiser to give, and that is the demarcation of that is going to be also Echad B'Tishrei. So we finished the list of the five halachas about the first of Tishrei. Some say also Ma'aseh Behema before, that's a Reb Shimon. But here it says, as far as years go, Shanim, which we don't know what that means yet, Shemitah and Yovel, Natia and Yerokos. Natia for Orla, and Yerokos for Meiser, to take off Trumas and Meiser for Yerokos, you have to know which year belongs to. The fourth Rosh Hashanah is in Shvat. Ve'echad Shvat Rosh Hashanah le'ilam kedei Rebbe Shammai, ve'selom and b'chamish asabot. That's a question if the Rosh Hashanah for trees. So this is very similar to Yerokos. Before we said Trumas and Meiser for vegetables, that's the first of Tishrei. But the Trumas and Meiser is for trees, which year it belongs to. The same idea, Trumas and Meisers, that you're not allowed to be Maaser from 1 year on another year, and also to know when is Meiser Sheni, when is Meiser Rani. So what is the cutoff point? Here it says not, as far as trees go, not the first of Tishrei, but either the first of Shvat or the 15th of Shvat. Everybody else that is Shvat, but the question if it's the first or the 15th, and we of course pass like Bisila, that's Tu B'Shvat, it's a Rosh Hashanah. Again, all these things are not Yom Adin. All these things is the beginning of a year, the cutoff point for the new cycle of the year. So we have the first of Nisan, the first of Elul, the first of Tishrei, and the 15th of Shvat.
But don't you say Tu B'Shvat, the trees are judged for food?
So it doesn't say that. No, I don't think so.
No,
I don't know. It says that Atzeres is done in the Paris Elon. The Yom Adin for the trees of the fruit of the trees is on Shavuos. Atzeres. People have accustomed to daven for esrog in that, but I don't know where it comes from. It's not a Yom Adin. It's not a Yom Adin.
It's a remez from the Bnei Yissaschar here on this Mishnah, because he says the fact that it uses singular, la ilan, means ha ilan. It means esrog.
But Rosh Hashanah does not mean Yom Adin.
I didn't say that. You just asked, where's the minhag to daven for an esrog? And I'm telling you, it's a Bnei Yissaschar on this Mishnah.
Okay, so I don't know what the remez is because it doesn't talk about davening for an esrog on a Rosh Hashanah. What does Rosh Hashanah have to do with the davening for an esrog? It says that it's a new year.
he says again that the Lashon Yachid, instead of plural, it doesn't say le'ilanos, it says le'ilan. The Bnei Yissaschar learns a remez, it's ha'ilan, it's the esrog tree, the miyukad tree, and therefore you're supposed to daven for an esrog.
Okay, so I won't say the question the third time. Okay, the Gemara asks, Lam lachem l'ma yilchasa. The Gemara says, the Mishnah says that the first of Nisan is the beginning of the year for kings. What it means that the year of how you count his reign, it progresses a year when it comes to the first of Nisan. So what do we care? What do we care to count how many years it's the reign of a certain king? You have to know because of the dates that you put in the contract. So and any documents. So nowadays we don't do this. We don't count according to the kings. We don't count according to the no kings, and we don't. And Rashi brings down the Gemara and Gittin that in those days when they had kings, you're supposed to. And Rashi brings down the Mishnah already that there's a Gemara and Gittin. He quotes a Gemara and Gittin. He's supposed to count the Shabbos according to the kings, B'Shlom Shlom Malchus, in order to show tribute to the kings. So and to be peace, Shlom Malchus. So he's supposed to count according to the kings. Our Mishnah Gemara is going to say it's talking about Jewish kings. We're going to see about Goyish kings, but Shlom Malchus to show that you give honor to the king to count according to his reign. So you're supposed to put the date in that document. It was very complicated in those days. When you saw a contract or some kind of document, it said in the year of a certain king, you have to know history. You have to know who's been the kings. You have to be up to date in all of your chronicles.
All over the place in the year of the sixth reign of the 16th era.
Yes. So in order to know where that was, you have to know the whole history to know when he was the king and how many years he was the king and what's the order of the different kings since then. How many years ago is that? Now it's much simplified that both the Jewish calendar and the Goyish calendar, they're very universalized. You don't have to know much. You don't have to know anything. You just have to know how to count. But in those days, you have to know who's this king, who's been the king before him. How many years did each king rule in order to know how many years ago did this king rule? So here,
excuse me, and are we talking about a Jewish king or a Goyish king, or it doesn't matter?
The Gemara is going to say we're talking about Jewish kings.
Uh-huh.
And then the Gemara is going to talk about how do you count for the Goyish kings. That's going to be another sugya. But in our Mishnah, the Gemara is going to say it's Jewish kings. That will be today's Gemara. At least part of the Gemara. And why do we care if of the dates that are in contracts? The Tanan, Shtori Chov HaMukdam and Psulim VaMuchornik Sherin. If you have the wrong date in the contract, it might even make it possible. If you have you have a date earlier in the contract that really then the deal happened, so it invalidates the contract. If you have a post-dated, it's kosher. Why is that? Because if you have a contract, let's say on a halva, on a loan, and you put a date, and you can make it predated, that means that the malva is going to be entitled to cash in on a lien that he really is not entitled to. The lien only starts from the time that he lent the money. And if he makes a predated contract, so then he has a lien that's even bigger that predates his loan. He's not entitled to that. If somebody would have sold a property, and then later on he borrowed money, so that that property that he sold is not mortgaged to the loan. But if he first had a loan and then he sold the property, so then the property is mortgaged to the loan. So it makes a difference if you make a predated contract is possible, a post-dated contract is kosher. So in order to know the dates, you have to put the date in the contract. And the Mishnah is telling us you do it according to the kings, and the way that they made it, it should be a certain standardized time that the king's year has progressed. Rashi puts into the Gemara, Taisus also seems to say that the Gemara is not only explaining why that you have to have a date and it goes according to the kings, but even the fact that they standardized it, they made it that all kings progress in the first of Nisan, is in order to avoid confusion that it might become sometimes a shtar muktam. It might cause that it should be a predated star if you don't know something. In the Pashut Pshat, the Gemara, maybe you don't have to go so deep. The Gemara is just saying that you have to have a date in the contract in order because or else it'll be making a lien which is not deserving. And the way they count it is according to the kings, that the Gemara Gittin says, Shlom Malchus, and they made that it should be a standardized time that the king's year progresses. But if you want to see more, Rashi and Taisus talk about how come it's better to make a standardized time than to make according to his personal anniversary. So that's a pretty simple Gemara, that the reason why you have to know the date that the king's year progresses is because it has to be a date in the contract, and if it's a predated, it'll be a puzzle. The Gemara goes into the details of this cutoff point of the first of Nisan. Tan Rabbanan. Melech Shamat Be'esim B'Tisha B'Adar. Chirben Shigia Echad B'Nisan. Also Loshana, a king that started his reign on the last day of the year, the 29th of Adar. And he only reigned 1 year. Then he continued into the next year. The next day, you're right, in the second year of the reign, it's ready in the second year. The first year is over. The cutoff point, it's a very serious cutoff point that even 1 day before he ruled, and now it's already the first of Nisan. Now you write in the contract, it's already the second year of King David. We'll talk about a good king. So even if he only ruled 1 day in the previous year, that's now the second year already. The Brisa continues, if he didn't start his reign until the first day of the year, the first of Nisan, it's not counted that the year is over until the next year, because that's the cutoff point. That's the end of the Brisa. We just open up the Brisa and analyze what we just learned. That's just quoting what we just said, that if he became king in the last year of the year, so in the next day, it's already considered into the next second year already. Hakamash Malan, turn the page. Hakamash Malan. What's that? Very small, yeah. Hakamash Malan, the Nisan Mashana Lamalachim. Two things you see. One is what we knew already from the Mishnah, that the cutoff point is the first of Nisan, that we know, and also that 1 day in the year is considered a year. It means there's an extra chiddush that even 1 day, you might think that it has to be a considerable time, maybe 30 days, that you can say that that was the first year, now it's the second year. Just have 1 day and already consider that was a whole year, and now on the day later you can say this is already the second year of the reign of the king. That's a chiddush. So that's what the Brisa says. Even 1 day is enough to be considered a year. The Brisa continues. Again, we're going to quote the Brisa we just learned. If he didn't become king until the first of Nisan, so you're not going to count that the year is over until the following Nisan. Then it's going to be the beginning of the second year. So Pshita, that's no chiddush on Badir. There's a whole year. You surely can't count the year before. He only became king today. So what's the chiddush that it's not counted a year until the end of the year? Well, you might have thought that if he was voted in, that those who are voted in nowadays also, they have that elections, let's say in November, and he doesn't take office until January. So you might have think that once he was voted in, you can start counting already his year. And in those days, whatever the Senate that they decide, not the Senate, but they were talking about Jewish kings over here, whoever decided, the Sanhedrin, whoever they decided to make the king. So you might think that once they decided, it's already counted. You can count it for his reign. No, you don't count until he starts taking office. If he didn't take office until the first of Nisan, he doesn't count that first year. That's what the Gemara says. The chiddush is even if they counted, they voted him in from Adar already, not voted, or they counted, whatever they decide he's going to be the king. I think that he already counted for the second year. The first year he also came in already. No, he didn't come in until he actually took power. Very nice. Tana Rabbanan, Brisa. The Brisa seems to be simple. The Gemara is going to see a little bit of chidushim over there. The Gemara is going to ask that everything seems to be simple. If the old king, the previous king, died in Adar, and the new king took office also on Adar. So how do you count that? How do you count that year? The chiddush is that year can be counted to both of them. That's the chiddush. That the first king, let's say David and Shlomo, that if David would have, when did David die? Which do we know when he died in Shavuos? Okay, so it's not a good example. But let's say that he would have died in Adar, and Shlomo, the next king, also took office in Adar. So it says that you can count that year for both kings. What does that mean? That even though, Rashi says a big chiddush, even though the king died, the previous king died in the beginning of Adar, let's say, you can count the rest of you count even after he died, you still counted his year. Even though somebody else took over, that a certain date, you can count 2 ways. You can count it in the 40th year of the previous king, or you can count it also the first year of the new king, because both of them are true. So Monin Lazev, count that year, even after he died. Even after the previous king died, that year is already attributed to him also. It's also attributed to the new king. You can count it either way.
You have to or you can?
You can count either way. You don't have to put two kings in. You don't have to both. Lazev, either one. It counts. You don't have to write both of them. You write either one. Either one is a valid contract.
But if you write to the deceased king and not the new king, so it's zilzal on the present.
So it seems that it's not. It's also it's his year also. He reigned in that year. How about Meis Benisan v'Amadacha Tachta Benisan? Also, one in Shana Lezev Lezeh. Seems to be simple. The Gemara is going to ask that simple. That if the previous king died in Nisan and the new king also started in Nisan, or anytime Rashi points out anytime during that year, also the year can be counted for both kings. You want to say what year that is? Of course, the date is going to be whatever date it happened, but the year, which year is it? Again, it can be counted for both kings because it's true that both kings reigned during that year. And the third case, if the previous king died in Adar and they didn't bring in a new king until Nisan, so the previous year is counted for the old king, and from Nisan is counted on the new king. Everything seems to be simple. The Bryce says three cases: both kings died in Adar, both kings died in Nisan, or one king died in Adar and the new king came in Nisan. So the Bryce says each time that the halacha goes according to what the fact should be. That both of them died in Adar, the previous year could be counted for both kings, and if both of them became in Nisan, then both kings could be counted for that year. And if the previous king died in Adar, that year goes to him in the contracts, and the new king that came in Nisan, so this year goes for him. And the Gemara is going to analyze this. We just finished saying, the master said, that was the first halacha. Both of them were in office during Adar, so the year is counted for either one. The Gemara asks Pshita, it goes without saying, and the Gemara says that's a chiddush. To count a year for both of them is a chiddush. You might think they don't count 1 year for two kings. Rashi says you might think that once the first king, the deceased king, since it was already attributed to him, you might think that the rest of the year you count only on that king. You're not going to attribute it to the second king also, even though he also came into office. Chaim Dov was saying the opposite, that once the new king came in, maybe it's a zilzal for the new king. But the Gemara thinks the other way, that once this year was attributed to the old king, then the new king doesn't take over in the contracts. You shouldn't call it on his name, since it's and make it simple that it's only be contributed to one of the kings, and the king who came first, he was ruling, so the year is attributed to him. The Mashma know that you can count the same date for two different descriptions. You can count it the last year of the previous king and the first year of the new king. Fine, that's a chiddush. That surely doesn't seem to be a chiddush already, because everything, both the first king, we knew already that if he got into Nisan, it's contributed to him. And now that a second king came also on Nisan, so it's counted to him also. So this new year could be counted for both of them. So that's Pshita already. We know you can count the year for two people. Pshita. Here's a chiddush that the old king, he lived 1 year into the new year. He lived 1 year into the first of Nisan, then he died. Could you count the rest of the year even after he died for that king? He says, yes, you could. Not only while he's alive, even after he died. Even after he died, you could still say that this is the third year of the reign of the king, even though he died. He died 6 months ago. He died on the first of Nisan. And you're going to say that the whole year is still attributed to him just because he ruled for 1 day? So we did say before that the last day of the year is considered a year. But maybe that's a chiddush, that's a smaller chiddush, that the last day of the year is considered like he ended up with a year. Then the last day, but to say that only 1 day in the new year, going to give the whole year to him because he ruled only 1 day, that's a chiddush. And Kamash one, that even at the beginning of the year also, you could say that it's also his year, and you can count the rest of the year for both kings, either the new king who took over in Nisan or any other month, and also the old king that had 1 day in the new month also, you could count it for him also. The third case, maybe it's a little bit hot, maybe you want to, everyone should be comfortable. Meis ba'adar v'amarachet achta b'Nisan. This was the third case of the Brisa, that the old king died in Adar, the new king died in Nisan, came in Nisan. So he gets the old year, he gets the new year. It seems to be simple. Last year goes for the first king to the previous king, and the new year goes for the second king to the new king. That also everything seems to be pshita. So the Gemara, and even the fact that he was already voted, like the Gemara said, that before the Gemara said a chiddush that even if he was voted in Adar, you don't count him till he started taking office. So is there any chiddush over here? We know that already. Also Melech and Melachu. The Gemara says from the Riboy, they have extra brisa. It must be coming to tell you a chiddush. What's the chiddush? That not only was he voted in, that Sanhedrin decided to instate him as being the next king, but also he's the son of the king. That he's the son of the previous king. There's more reason why it's like you say in the bag already. For sure he's going to become the king, because Rashi brings down that if it's possible, we do instate the Yerusha. Rashi brings down is Rashi. He brings the Fisha Malchus Yerushahi, the pasuk says that the kingship, if the son is fitting, so he does take over the position of his father. So if both he's the son of the previous king and the decision was made that he's going to be the next king, you might think that even though he didn't actually take office until Nisan, it would be already enough reason to count the year for him, even in Adar. Until he actually takes office, you don't count it for him. It could be counted as a second year because he was already voted in Adar, and also it was sure that he's going to become the king because he's the son of the king. So we finished the Bryce with all the Chidushim. The Yisod stays the same, that the cutoff point is the first of Nisan, and even one day in the previous year is considered a year, and even one day into the new year is considered a year. If you have two kings, you can count the year for both of them. And the last thing the Gemara said, even if he was voted in Adar, and even if he also was a Ben Melech and Melech, also you don't count the old year for the new king until he actually took over office. If he took office in Echad Nisan, then he doesn't get, it's not called the second year, it's just called the first year. If that's good, we start the next sugya, and the question is only going to be Minayin. How do you know all this? How do you know that the kings are counted from Nisan? How do we know? What's going to be a source that the kings, we're going to be talking about Jewish kings over here. How do you know that Jewish kings, their count of reign starts from the first of Nisan? I don't think it's going to say the first of Nisan, it's going to say Nisan. Shenema. So it brings a pasuk in Malachim where it talks about the Shlama built the Beis Hamikdash. It says, it's a pretty long pasuk. Vahi b'shmonim shana v'arba mayor shana l'seis b'nei Yisrael meretz Yisrael v'shana harviyis v'chodesh ziv v'chodesh hasheni l'mloch shamo al Yisrael. It says, at the end of the pasuk says that he built the Beis Hamikdash. He started building the Beis Hamikdash. It says 480 years from Yitzias Mitzrayim. Shmonim shana v'arba mayor shana. 480 years from the exodus of coming out of Mitzrayim. In the fourth year, I'll just read it the way the Pashad is going to be, in the fourth year of the reign of Shlomo, Shana Revius. It throws in between that it was in Iyar, the Chodesh Ziv or Chodesh Hasheni. It was in a Chodesh Ziv. We don't call it Ziv, we call it Iyar. But Pasuk over there calls it Ziv, which is the second month. And then the Lo Shlomo al Yisrael goes back to Shana Revius. In the fourth year, it throws in parentheses that it was in Iyar, which is the second month, to the reign of Shlomo. It doesn't mean the second month of the reign of Shlomo. It means the fourth year. Shana Revius, Lo Shlomo al Yisrael. So what does the pasuk say? 480 years from Yitzias Mitzrayim, the fourth year of the reign of Shlomo. So the pasuk doesn't tell you when you count the reign of Shlomo, but the Gemara is going to make a drash. This is going to be a drash. The pasuk doesn't tell you anything, but the drash is going to be Makish, Malchus Shlomo, Yitzias Mitzrayim. The pasuk is comparing. It says both of them. It counts two counts in the same pasuk. It says the count of 480 years from Yitzias Mitzrayim, the fourth year of Shlomo's reign. So it's a hekesh. The pasuk compares both of them in the same breath. Now Yitzias Mitzrayim in Nisan, Malchus Shlomo in Nisan. Just like Yitzias Mitzrayim is a given that we know you count from Nisan, so too the reign of Shlomo, which is a Jewish king, also you count from Nisan. That's the end of the drash. The Gemara is going to have a problem with it, but so far that's the drash. That since we know that's considered a given that the Yitzias Mitzrayim is counted from Nisan, and the pasuk puts together two counts in the same pasuk, so also the reign of Shlomo is also counted from Nisan. The rest of the Gemara is going to be handling that who says that Yitzias Mitzrayim is counted from Nisan. Now everybody knows that Yitzias Mitzrayim happened in Nisan, and also it says for sure you count the months. Whenever we say a month, the third month, the fourth month, the fifth month, we're always counting from Nisan. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the year starts in Nisan. Just to give an example, the way we count the years from Tishrei. When does it come Tafshin Pei Beis? We count it from Tishrei. But the months, we don't say that Tishrei is the first month, we can't call it the seventh month. So just because you count months from Nisan doesn't necessarily mean that's when the year starts. So too, the Gemara thinks, even though the Ma'aseh, the anniversary of coming out of Mitzrayim was in Nisan, that doesn't mean that that's when the year is counted. Maybe it goes according to that the Gemara is going to talk about Tishrei. Tishrei is the beginning of the year as far as we know. Also, either Brias Olam or the agricultural year, the cycle starts in Tishrei. The other things we have in the Mishnah that many things start in Tishrei. Shmid and V'yovlos, there are things that start in Tishrei, like we do. So even though the pasuk says the 480 years from Yitzias Mitzrayim, maybe it doesn't come from Nisan to Nisan. Maybe the way you count the years of Yitzias Mitzrayim is from Tishrei. As Rashi says, that even though it went out of Nisan, it could be that once it came 6 months later, it came Tishrei, it could be now they started counting the second year from Yitzias Mitzrayim. The first year is over, the same way we said by kings. That even though it didn't have a full year, it was one day in the previous year, and now it's ready the next year. You say it's the second year of the reign of the king. So too by Yitzias Mitzrayim, maybe the cutoff point of the year is in the first of Tishrei, let's say, And therefore, even though they went out of Nisan, when they came Tishrei 6 months later, they started saying, now it's the second year of Yitzias Mitzrayim, in the third year, right next Tishrei. And when it says 480 years, it doesn't count from Echav Nisan, maybe it counts from Echav Tishrei. So the whole drasha, how you know kings, is because the pasuk is Makish at Yitzias Mitzrayim, as if you're saying that it's a given that Yitzias Mitzrayim is counted from Nisan. The Gemara is challenging that. Who says? Where does the Gemara say? Yitzias Mitzrayim Gufa. Who tells you that Yitzias Mitzrayim is counted from Nisan? Maybe you count the years from Tishrei, as we just said, that even though the months are counted from Nisan, even though the anniversary of coming out of Mitzrayim was from Nisan, that doesn't mean that the years are counted like that. So this is the Gemara's challenge to the Drash. Maybe Yitzias Mitzrayim itself was not counted from Nisan. So the Gemara is going to ingeniously go to prove that. That shouldn't enter your mind. Al pi Hashem, vayom Hashem v'shnas arba'im v'seis b'nei Yisrael v'meres Mitzrayim v'chodesh hachamishi v'echad lachodesh. This is a pasuk in Parshas Masei. Over there it's talking about all the 42 masos, and over there it sticks in when Aaron died. Everybody knows this is the only place where it says the Yarside in the Torah, the Rosh Chodesh Av, the first day of Rosh Chodesh Av, the 5th month, the first of the 5th month, that's when Aaron died. So it says over there, Aaron HaKohen went up to Har HaHor on the word of Hashem, and he died over there in the 40th year of Bnei Yisrael coming out of Mitzrayim, in the 5th month and the first of the month. Rosh Chodesh Av, that's when Aaron died. And it says over there, that's the 40th year of coming out of Mitzrayim. That doesn't show anything yet. Now it also says, in the beginning of Parshas Dvarim, Vayihi b'arba'im shana, v'ashti asa chodesh v'echad lachodesh, diber Moshe al bnei Yisrael. Moshe, in the beginning of Sefer Dvarim, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke to Am Yisrael in the 40th year, in the 11th month, Ashti asa chodesh, the 11th month is Shvat, and the first of the month. Rosh Chodesh Shvat, of the 40th year, Moshe spoke to Am Yisrael. So what happened over here? What the Gemara is going to say, just to give a preview what the Gemara is going to say, that it said the 40th year was Chodesh Av, and then later on it says the 40th year was Chodesh Shvat, and it's still the 40th year. That means that it didn't progress a year in Tishrei. If you say that the year of the count of Mitzrayim is progressing in Tishrei, so then Av was the 40th year. Then you have Elul. Then it comes to Chodesh Tishrei. It should become the 41st year. So it says when it says in Sefer Dvarim, it says that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke on the 1st of Shvat. It shouldn't be the 40th year. It should have been the 41st year. The fact that the calendar didn't change on from Av until Shvat, that shows that Tishrei is not going to be the Rosh Hashanah. I think Gemara is assuming now, if it's not Tishrei, then it's going to be Nisan. How's that inside? Here is it. With the after Gemara means the two psukim, it means the pasuk by Aaron that it was Chodesh Shvat in the 40th year. It means the pasuk by Moshe that it was Chodesh. I'm sorry, Aaron was Chodesh Av, and here it says by Moshe it was Chodesh Shvat, and the both time it says the 40th year. With the Koi Ba'av, Kori Le B'Shnas Arboim, the Koi B'Shvat, Kori Le Shnas Arboim, the Chlal Le Rosh Hashanah Lav Tishrehu. If in Rosh Chodesh Shvat he calls it the 40th year, I'm sorry, Rosh Chodesh Av it calls it the 40th year, and then again in Rosh Chodesh Shvat it still calls it the 40th year. It must be Tishrei didn't progress. It didn't become a new year in Tishrei. Very beautiful raya. But the Gemara finds a fault in this raya because it doesn't say in this pasuk here in Dvarim, it doesn't say the 40th year of Yitzias Mitzrayim. No, it doesn't say. In the previous pasuk by Aaron, it does say that it does say that Aaron died in the 40th year of Yitzias Mitzrayim. But when it says in Dvarim that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke in the 40th year, it doesn't say the 40th year of what? It doesn't say that. Bishlama Heich. The first pasuk of Aaron, it does say the 40th year of Yitzias Mitzrayim. Elahai, but this pasuk about Moshe Rabbeinu, Yitzias Mitzrayim, Mishkan. Maybe it's counting from the erecting of the Mishkan. That happened in the 2nd year. So it means even though it says in the beginning of Dvarim that Moshe spoke in the 40th year, maybe really it was the 41st year. Maybe really we're wrong. And when it came after Av, it came El Tishrei, it's really the 41st year. But when the pasuk calls it the 40th year, because it's not counting Yitzias Mitzrayim, it's counting from the 2nd year of the first count, which is when they built the Mishkan, and now it's the 40th year of the Mishkan, which is the 41st year of the Yitzias Mitzrayim. And maybe the calendar did progress in Tishrei. The answer is Kedam Rapapa, Shnas Esrim, Shnas Esrim, L'Gzer Shava, Achanami, Shnas Abam, L'Gzer Shava. Later on, tomorrow's Gemara, we're going to find that there's a pasuk where it says in the 20th year of a certain king. Another pasuk says in the 20th year, without saying which king that is. And the Gemara over there, the Papa says that there's Gzer Shava. Since both of them say Shnas Esrim, and one of them says Shnas Esrim from where, and the other one doesn't say. So we can assume Gzeir Shava. Rashi says he had a Kabbalah from his Rebbe that these two psukim are coming to say Gzeir Shava. Wherever it says the word Shnas with a number, it's coming to say the same counting from the same date. So just like over there, we made the Gzeir Shava Shnas Esrim to another place where it says Shnas Esrim. So too here both psukim say Shnas Arboim. One of them says Shnas Arboim from Yitzis Mitzrayim. So too we can assume that the pasuk also means Shnas Arboim from Yitzis Mitzrayim. That's it for today. A short daf. So it's much easier than Tzachas Beitzah so far, and I hope everybody will be enjoying it. We'll come back again. Okay, we have a
Thank
good
you.
break today. We'll be coming back again to do Tehillim at 12 o'clock.
Well, excuse me, we're up to Umi Mai.
Yes.
But that, could you make
Umi
a
Mai is
summary
gonna
yet?
be Umi Mai is gonna be a question on what we just said, though, right?
Right. We're going to continue tomorrow. Tomorrow, the next questions on this Gemara. Just to
Thank you.
summarize, we said, as Rabbi Ram asked, there's just to summarize the things that we learned. Is Abba Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah means the beginning of a year. It said it has nothing to do with Yom Adin yet, nothing to do with the Day of Judgment. It has to do with the beginning of a year cycle. We said, therefore, Rosh Hashanah was going to be the first of Nisan, the first of Elul, the first of Tishrei, and the 15th of, according to Beis Hillel, we passed the 15th of Shvat. And the first one we talked about. The rest of them we'll speak about as we go further. But so far we just learned about the Malachim. We said Malachim is when you count the reign of a king, and Nafkamin is going to be for Shtoros, that the date has to have the how many years the king is in office. And we're going now Jewish kings. The Gemara is going to talk about. We see so far Shlomo HaMelech, and if it will be a Shtar Muktam, if it will be a predated Shtar, it's possible because you're going to be collecting from a lien that you don't really deserve. So therefore, it has to have the proper date, and they made a standardized birthday for the anniversary of the king's reign. It doesn't go according to his personal year. It doesn't have to have a full year. It just goes according to Rosh Chodesh Nisan is the cutoff point. And the Gemara says it's very extreme. Even the last day of the previous year, the year is over, and 1 year into the new year is also considered a full year. It says if you have two kings that are overlapping, so then you count the year for both of them. You can count the year both to the deceased or the past king and also the new king also. And the Gemara says that you don't count the old year for a king who didn't start getting into office until Rosh Chodesh Nisan, even if he was voted in, and even if he's a Melech and Melech, you also don't count him until he actually took office. But any other solution over there? Offhand, I don't see any other Chedushim. That's what the Gemara said. Then we started the Sugya. How do you know? What's the source to say that the king is counted, the reign of the king counts from Nisan? And the Gemara says a Hekish. It says in the Sefer Malachim that Shlomo Melech started building the Beis Hamikdash in the 480th year of Yetzias Mitzrayim, which was the 4th year of his reign. Since it puts together in the same pasuk, so we're assuming that's a lot of Darshan that both of them start from the same starting point. And just like Yetzias Mitzrayim is counted from Rosh Chodesh Nisan, so too the kings also started from Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But the Gemara is going to have difficulty. Who says that Yetzias Mitzrayim is counted from Rosh Chodesh Nisan? Even though the months are counted from Nisan and the anniversary, when it happened on the 15th of Nisan, that doesn't necessarily mean that you count the years. Maybe the years are counted from Tishrei, like we count the years many times, we count from Tishrei. So the Gemara proves it because the pasuk in end of Maseh, and end of Dvarim, talks about Aaron died in the Rosh Chodesh Av of the 40th year of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and then it says the beginning of the Dvarim that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke on the Rosh Chodesh Shvat of the 40th year, and the Gemara says Gzeir Shava says it's also the 40th year of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and you see that the year didn't progress in Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. If you say that Tishrei is going to be the Rosh Hashanah of Yetzias Mitzrayim, so then if in Av was the 40th year, so then in Shvat it would have been even the 41st year. And it says, no, it says it's the 40th year. Is it right that Tishrei is not the Rosh Hashanah, and therefore we're going to assume that it's Nisan. That's the whole Gemara. Okay?
Yeshakayach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll be back
Have a
in
good day.
20 minutes. Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you.